Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the WOW History Channel. My name is Ron Guth, and each week I discuss a little piece of history that hopefully will make you say, wow, I never learned that, or wow, I never knew that, and was never taught that in school. If you've been following this channel, you know that I rely heavily on source documents. Source documents are contemporary records that can be original letters, official government documents, images, and even, in this case, trial records. I like source documents because they're reliable and they haven't been run through the filter of historical revision. They represent the raw facts as they occurred, as close as possible to the original events and people. So, I have to admit with some embarrassment that I recently fell into a trap with a so-called source document. And what a wow moment it was for me. Usually I try to get wow moments for you. This one was for me. So here's the story. The other day I was describing an item for Early American History Auctions, which is a San Diego company that offers unique and interesting historical items. The item I was describing was a reverse painting on glass of Captain Henry Whitby. Reverse paintings were popular ways of making inexpensive keepsakes. The painting was done on the backside of glass, which meant that it was protected from any rubbing or wear in the future because the painting is on the inside. So here's the reverse painting of Captain Whitby. You can see his name identified in the tablet below his picture. The paint is peeling off a little bit, but you can see his name pretty clearly. Here's a close-up of Whitby's image. They just zoomed the camera in so you could get a closer image of what he looked like. Now, I've never heard of Captain Whitby before, so I did what any good researcher would do. I searched for his name on Google. It turns out that Whitby was a captain in the Royal Navy around 1806 when he commanded the Leander, a British warship. The Leander was a big ship. It was 140 feet long and had 50 guns, so you can imagine how menacing she was in the water. Now, beginning in 1804, British ships began stopping any American ships coming from overseas and going into the New York harbor, as long as they were in international waters outside the 3-mile limit. Now, if they found any French goods or any intelligence, like secret codes and that sort of thing on the American ships, they captured the ships and then they took them to Halifax in Nova Scotia. This was the run-up to the War of 1812 when the British were harassing American ships and impressing American sailors. Impressing doesn't mean that they were trying to impress them, but they were basically kidnapping them and forcing them into the Royal Navy. Now keep in mind that America and Great Britain were allies after the Revolutionary War, but suffice it to say that they weren't the best of friends, and they became worse friends as they approached the year of 1812, mostly because of this stuff that the British were doing on the open seas. Now on April 25th, 1806, the Leander and 2 other ships were pursuing some American ships off the coast of New York. To get the ships to come about and allow themselves to be boarded, the British fired warning shots across the bow, so to speak, of the American ships. Well, one of the shots that was fired went over the American ship and hit an American sailor on another ship that was within the 3-mile limit, and it killed him instantly. So just imagine a cannonball that weighed 12 to 24 pounds hitting someone at full speed. It is not a pretty sight. Anyway, the Americans were justifiably outraged by this murder, and even President Thomas Jefferson called for the arrest of Captain Whitby. He actually gave a proclamation stating that if anybody captured Captain Whitby, bring him back to America, and he was absolutely forbidden to enter American waters ever again on either the Leander or any other ship in the future. Now here's where the train went off the rails as far as I was concerned. There's an authentic document from 1812 titled The Trial of Captain Henry Whitby for the murder of John Pierce with his dying declaration, ... by an eminent reporter. Now, the copy illustrated here was published in New York and is currently in the collection of the Library of Congress. And there are a few other copies that are floating around out there for sale. I saw one for sale for $1,500. So they exist in other places. The trial document is a fascinating transcript of Captain Whitby's trial in April 1807, where he is depicted as being just completely uncooperative. For instance, when they asked Whitby to raise his right hand to be sworn in, he stuck his hands in his pockets. When they asked him how he pled to the charges, he kept silent. He said nothing in his defense, and he just looked around the court disdainfully at the judge, the lawyers, and the jurors. Well, the grand jury found Whitby guilty and sentenced him to death by hanging. Now, this authentic trial document described above went so far as to record his dying declaration just as he was about to be hanged, but he was saved at the last moment by a reprieve from a British envoy. What drama, what tension, what a story, except that it was all fake. Whitby was never arrested, and there was never a trial by an American court. I repeat, Whitby was never arrested, and there was never a trial by an American court. Here's what really happened. In 1807, Whitby was tried by a British court-martial where he was acquitted of killing John Pierce. Whitby was never punished, and John Pierce, the dead sailor, and the Americans never received any justice. So the 1812 trial document was nothing more than a propaganda piece that was designed to raise public anger and sentiment during the War of 1812, which began in June of that year, in 1812. So what gave it away? Well, how about some of the jurors' names? Robert Neverfail, James Fear Not, Stephen Steadfast, Timothy Trusty, and how about Jasper True Blue? Then there was the place where the hanging was to occur. The place was called Never Sink, a great name for a boating story. I admit that they got me good. I learned an important lesson from this. As a researcher, you have to always be skeptical of all historical documents and scrutinize them carefully before calling them a source document. Thank you for joining me for this episode. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the like button so that you'll get notifications anytime I post a new video. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Wow History Channel. Goodbye, and thanks for viewing.